you've got to be careful on the upsell, because I think as you bring in these new skills and capabilities, you've got to make sure that you're going to deliver. So don't overpromise, because I've seen lots of examples of people saying, oh, it's really important that we do this part of it or that part of it, and we've got a couple of people that can probably do it. Be careful, because if you say you've got fantastic capability in an area which is maybe quite nascent and you don't do a great job, of course that can have a negative impact on all the current activity that you're doing for that client.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Jon, thanks ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Very nice to be chatting, Mike.
So really looking forward to this. So for the benefit of our audience that are listening, who are you? What do you do? And something unusual about yourself.
Crikey. Okay. So yes, my name is Jon Peppiatt. I currently have a sort of range of roles. I have a sort of plural portfolio sort of life at the moment. So my background is 35 years in advertising, 8 years at Collett Dickinson Pearce, which was a brilliant creative agency, which very sadly is no longer around. And then 26 years at BBH, where I did a number of roles there, leaving the business about 4 years ago. The last 6 years I spent as their chairman, and now I'm a sort of independent consultant, primarily in the advertising and media sector. I chair an executive search business called The Blueprint, and I consult for a range of businesses, whether that's production companies, PR agencies, ad agencies. I run the old pitch, so occasionally brands want to find a new ad agency, and I help manage that as a sort of pitch consultant. So lots of different things. I'm a trustee of NABS, which is the media industry's charity. So lots of different things which keep me out of trouble, which is important.
It is important, absolutely. And which is a separate topic, which we might come back to in a second. But anyway, something unusual about yourself.
I guess that there's probably a few things, but nothing appropriate for this podcast. But no, I think
I've had all sorts,
yes,
Jon. All sorts.
I bought a farm shop with my wife in the middle of lockdown. No experience of anything like this at all. And to be fair, my wife runs the business amazingly. But yeah, half a mile from home, we have a little farm shop based on some watercress beds, which was actually on Country File last Sunday.
Really?
Yeah. So about 4 or 5 million people.
Claim to fame.
And yeah, we're in the Times top 35 farm shops in the country. So
wow, what's it called, Jon?
It's called Wesley Farm Shop, which is just outside Alresford, which is a little market town in Hampshire, about a mile down the road from where we live. So
brilliant. And what does it specialise in?
It's set on watercress beds, which is why it's a farm shop. So there's lots of watercress itself and watercress scones, watercress soup, sausages made out of watercress. So that's a big thing. We have lots of fantastic chalk stream trout in the area. So we do lots of trout patés and trout fillets, as well as breads and fruit and veg and all sorts. So no, it's going great.
That sounds amazing.
So yeah, all credit to my wife. But I guess I count a little bit something to do with me as
exactly.
I'm on the ownership contract or something. But
that's amazing. So just going back, Jon, for a second to, you said it keeps you occupied. So I know a lot of people that kind of retired in their kind of 70s, and once they stopped working, it all kind of fell apart, which I think is really sad in life. And keeping our minds occupied with something meaningful, whatever that may be, rather than just staring at the TV or reading the newspaper, I think it's really important, because we're going to live longer and we need to be active for longer. And our mental state has a big impact on our physical state. Just talk about that just for a second. Yeah, completely unscripted.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. I've spoken to a few people. So I'm 56 now.
I'm 60.
You're 60. Congratulations. No, I think going from full-time work to doing absolutely nothing is really, really difficult. And I've spoken to a few people who have done that and have really struggled. And I think what I've tried to do, from making the decision 4 years ago to stop full-time and to do a sort of mix of different things, for me is quite a nice sort of runway. So, people sometimes say to me, "Are you semi-retired?" And I go, well, No, I'm just part-time work.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do think, look, I think in life in general, I think it's really important to have stuff to do. Having said that, I think when it comes to the time when I do stop work pretty much permanently, I will still do lots and lots and lots of stuff. And I think I have a range of hobbies, so I'm not worried about being bored. But I do think I would advise, don't go from full-time to absolutely nothing. See if there's some stuff, and whether that's charity, which I'm a trustee of a couple of charities, which I spend quite a lot of time on and I love doing. I would suggest a sort of phasing out approach as we go in through our life.
And diversification of interests.
Yeah.
I mean, owning a farm shop is amazing. Given the world you came from and that you still operate in within marketing agencies, and going into a physical goods business that sells into a local community and sources from local people, I think that's fantastic. And you bring those skills to bear as well.
Yeah, well, I guess certainly sort of the customer experience is important, which obviously, we've learned over the years in our world in terms of advising clients on that. So, and we do a little bit of advertising. So I've turned into an occasional copywriter, which was not my core skill.
Do you know Nigel Roberts, by any chance? So I interviewed Nigel the other week, talking of copywriters.
One of the great.
Which was a fascinating, amazing character. Very humble, lovely character. And amazing stories.
And he lives, I think, about 4 or 5 miles away from here.
Does he?
Here, yeah.
Really?
I see him on the train occasionally going up to London, yeah.
Amazing.
I don't know him well, but certainly his reputation as one of the great writers remains pretty clear.
I should introduce you to given you're in the same area. Anyway, moving on to the questions, or else the listeners will think it's about farming, which it's not. So, agency growth and business development. Do you want to talk about how do you balance net new clients versus retentions and upsells?
Sure. I mean, I think so. One of the things I did at BBH, and even the last 6 years when I was chairman, was I ran the sort of the business development team at BBH. And I think for me, the first thing is you've got to have a growth strategy. So you go into your year knowing, and whether you've got shareholders or whether an independent agency, deciding what is the right amount of growth, sustainable growth going into any new calendar year. And I think for me, there are two bits to that. There is what instinctively do we think it is? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 15%? Again, if you're part of a holding company, they will probably tell you what the number might be. But then, of course, what you do is part of, right, how do we achieve that growth? And you do a bottom-up exercise, which I think for me, you break down into 3 areas, exactly to your question. What is net new? What is the current revenue that you're going to generate from existing clients based on current remit? And then what is any organic growth that you might be able to get from that client? And I think for me, net new, it's the most difficult. You're almost always in a pitch environment. You're pitching against 3 or 4 agencies. So what is your chance of conversion? 25%.
If you're doing well.
Yeah, but if you're competing against 3 or 4, if it's a level playing field, it is difficult. Having said that, it is the lifeblood for agencies. I think it gives the business an opportunity to tell their story and why they can add value to any client's business. And there is the thrill of a chase. And certainly if I look back in my career, almost all of the best moments when you get the call to say you've picked up a new client. So I think it is very, very important that you deploy your resources to enable you to have a little bit of slack in the system for the new business opportunities that come across.
And innovation, John. It also drives innovation. Yeah, new clients bring new challenges, brings innovation.
Absolutely right. And I think you then get, but there's no point winning net new business if you have a leaky bucket and you're spending the whole time chasing new clients and you're not looking after the existing clients. And I think that is really, really important. There's lots of ways, obviously, that you can, maintain the relationship and build and develop, a relationship with your existing clients. So how you deploy your resources against the two to make sure you don't take your eye off the ball is absolutely critical on your existing clients who are existing and in the bank and ongoing. So they're the things arguably you want to look after more than focusing too much on net new. But then particularly at the moment, isn't it, is organic growth. So as the media environment has changed so much, traditional agencies are needing to bring in different skills and capabilities and processes and technology, etc., to make sure they are fit for purpose to deliver some of the content that the client now needs to produce across the multitude of channels that are now out there. So it's really, really important, and I think any agency, you'll look at existing clients, you go, how can we get a greater percentage of their marketing spend? And what skills and capabilities do we need to bring in, and different models? Because if you're delivering enormous amounts of content on social versus doing a big multimedia brand campaign, how you work in those different spaces and the price point that clients are expecting is different. So you need to do things differently. I think the only other thing I would say is you've got to be careful on the upsell, because I think as you bring in these new skills and capabilities, you've got to make sure that you're going to deliver. So don't overpromise, because I've seen lots of examples of people saying, oh, it's really important that we do this part of it or that part of it, and we've got a couple of people that can probably do it. Be careful, because if you say you've got fantastic capability in an area which is maybe quite nascent and you don't do a great job, of course that can have a negative impact on all the current activity that you're doing for that client.
Absolutely.
And
I think, Jon, AI is a very good example of that. Everyone's saying they can do AI generated content for clients and automation and efficiency, but it's brand new and no one's really trodden that path at scale before. And if clients trust an agency to do that, that's great. Unless the agency, as you say, is going, I've got 2 people I could respray, I'm sure it'll be fine. And then it's not fine.
No, and I think, unsurprisingly, it's impossible to have any kind of conversation, isn't it, about certainly the media world without talking about AI and its impact. And I think, unsurprisingly, different businesses are at different places. Some absolutely think that AI is going to be 95% of what they do. What I am hearing most from agency leaders is to go, of course, it's critically important to use Gen AI for lots and lots of tasks. A lot of the time, it's low-value tasks, probably. And the need for high-level strategic and creative thinking has never been greater. The challenge of that, as we've talked about before, is if the business model for these agencies is cost plus, you're going, hang on a minute. So there's lots of low value tasks that are now done by AI that aren't done by human beings. Therefore, the fee that we were paying you last year presumably has to be reduced because you're using the technology rather than people on the ground.
And we're going to come back to that, Jon, towards the back end. I want to come back to commercial models and go into that in a bit more detail, because I think that is it's a critical topic. Just on the new business, just to close off that topic, just give me your top 2 or 3 success strategies for acquiring new business, because it's the Achilles heel of every agency. How do you acquire net new clients? What's your kind of learning across the piece?
I think the first thing, and this definitely helps in conversion, is choose the right pitches and the right clients to go for.
Definitely. So qualification.
Critical. And that is so important. And, we've all been guilty, whether there's a creative opportunity or a commercial opportunity for a client where you haven't necessarily got a huge amount of sector experience, and you go, right, is this right? But God, the 2 million quid's worth of revenue would be lovely to have, and you go for it and you end up not winning. So I would be very, very selective in terms of what you go for. I think the second thing is, and this is a sort of broader value and belief system I have, is, you've got to be yourself. You've got to be authentic in how you talk and the narrative that you create in the RFPs. You've got to be natural and authentic in the room. I think people forget quite easily that pitches are very human things. Of course, you've got to show case studies and why your company has got the skill and capability and processes and wherewithal to deliver on what the client is after. But don't underestimate the importance of being a human being and understanding that you are actually going to be working with people. It is a people thing, pitching. So focus on that a lot.
So chemistry really means something.
Yeah.
The chemistry between human beings.
Absolutely. And I think chemistry goes back to the qualification thing in the first place. We would always use, when I was at BBH doing new business, the chemistry meeting, is viewed as the clients looking at the agency and go, could I see ourselves working with them? I would also go, for our perspective, are these the type of clients that we think we could have a mutually beneficial relationship? And sometimes that wasn't the case, and we would end up pulling out of the pitch, which of course you do reluctantly, but it has to be both ways. And then I think it's just go for it. I think there's lots of conversations in a pitch thing is, are we trying to show our creative capabilities, or are we just trying to win the pitch? people sometimes say those two are different things. I would always go handbrake off. We are presenting ourselves as the very best we can do. If we think a particular campaign idea is the right thing for the client, we go, even if it's brave, even if it's risky, even if we think there's a chance that they're not going to like it, stick to your principles and your guns, listen to your heart as well as your head, and give what you believe is the best solution. Don't sort of second guess and go, is that too risky? Is that too brave? Or are they ready for that? I'm not sure. For me, it's put your best foot forward and go for it. And if ultimately they don't like it, then maybe it wasn't the like-minded client that you think it might have been. And
Exactly. So I had one very similar to you, John. I worked with a number of agencies. I helped them on that process from qualification, conversion, and then negotiation. Those are the kind of three bits that I do. And a number of clients, and one recently, which sadly lost quite a big pitch, the feedback from the client was, there was nothing wrong with what you did. Methodology's fine, people were great, had a great experience. Unfortunately, you didn't go above and beyond. And what you've just described to me, I think, is going above and beyond, which is it's a pitch that they're not paying for the creative work you're doing. So if you've got ideas that are very left field, well, why not bring them to the table? Because what you're trying to show, in my view, is you're trying to show them where your thinking can go, how you behave as a team, how you take on challenges that maybe haven't been done before, what approach you take to doing that. Engaging the client in a challenging conversation. As a next buyer, I loved agencies that would challenge our thinking, because we may have got our thinking wrong. We may have made the wrong assumptions. We may be being too conservative. That's how you break through.
No, I think that's exactly right. And again, you definitely want to be reined back in rather than the client thinking, oh, I'm not sure about the magic of their thinking. And, it's good and it's right and it's strategically okay, but I just can't feel the creative magic. I can't feel the emotion. I haven't got the hairs going on the... I think so don't hold back.
And the creative strategy. Nigel Roberts was saying the other week, spend time on the strategy, spend time on the problem statement, spend time understanding their competitive landscape as a client. Because if you've got the right strategy, the execution, it's not easy, but it's easier because it's aligned around a strategy. Just bring it to the table a bunch of ideas that are random, which are disconnected to a strategy. You aren't going to win.
Yeah, and that's said by a creative who, historically
exactly
strategic. And I think I talked about this on LinkedIn or somewhere last year. I think now in new business, particularly with the fragmented media environment we're in, and clients, they really want a strategic partner who can help them navigate an increasingly complex marketing ecosystem. And, I think mirroring what you said, Mark, it's having worked at BBH for 26 years, I can never say anything other than the creative is critical. And I still absolutely believe that. But I do think in a pitch process, clients are arguably looking at the strategic people in the room almost more critically than they are on the creative, because I think they believe, look, we've seen all the great creative work you've done with a number of clients through your case studies. Even if we haven't seen it in the pitch process, I'm sure we can get to some wonderful creative execution. But if you don't understand my business, we're starting in the wrong place. So no, agree.
And so win and lose, John, let's go on to the next kind of theme about why do full service agencies win and why do they lose kind of like RFP pitch process in your view? If you look across again at all your experience, vast experience, are there themes that come out? There must be themes.
It's one of the most difficult things about pitching a new business is that you do something for one client and they absolutely love it. And then you repeat what you did on the previous client. It's certainly in terms of how you tell the story and for whatever reason they don't like it. So I think we would win and lose for very different reasons as we would go through a calendar year. I think like anything, isn't it? It's the focus that we do when you're working with a client. You've got to be on brief. You've got to focus. I think, you get this, it's the diamond shape, isn't it? You have all this information that you can take and you keep it wide and broad and thing, but you've got to then bring it through to a more focused sort of top of the diamond. And I think RFPs need to be short and precise and to the point and relevant and on brief. And I think sometimes creative agencies try and do something which, it's amazing, this RFP, it's different because we bound it in a different way, or we've got something popping out of it, or we've got a little film, I'm not saying don't do that, but for me, that's a little bit of theatre, which quite often detracts from actually what you're trying to say. So short, sweet, and to the point, I think would get you in the room for that critical chemistry meeting, which is obviously the stage after RFP.
Being memorable is critical, but being remembered for the wrong thing is really bad.
No, and I think with RFP, it's the same with pitches. What are the moments in a pitch presentation or in a chemistry meeting, which is the sort of the lean-in moments when you say something or you demonstrate something and you see the clients really looking in and occasionally scribbling something down on a bit of paper to go, right, what are the three memorable things around agency X versus agency Y? Because almost all these pitch processes, certainly at the initial stage, they might be meeting 6, sometimes even 8 agencies in a 2-day period. And with our industry's sort of the name challenge and the initials, is it BBH or DDB or VCCP? And, they don't, so much of their world is actually not looking into agency world. And I think they probably do spend more time looking at our world than actually that they do. So no, standout, memorable, lean in moments, absolutely critical, whether that's in an RFP with a view on the changing media landscape or whatever it would be. I think the other thing as well is avoiding that sort of generic marketing lingo, which you hear, and just try and speak and write as a human being would be, rather than all the latest buzzwords, etc. I mean, sometimes you do, and I find myself saying them and I go, oh my God, I'm now just a marketing cliche. But
so, John, if I look at that from an ex-procurement person's lens, you're right. If there are 6 pitches going on, we've done all the scoring, and I've collected all the scores, and I've built the big spreadsheet, and we're going through everyone and working out, okay, so who's our preferred that we're going to negotiate with, and then who's our number 2 and 3 that are our fallbacks, basically. I'm not the decision maker, clearly, because I'm the governance guy. I'm running the process. I have a say, but it's the marketing director, or it's the IT director, or it's the HR director, whatever the function is that's going through that process. In my experience, what happens is the CMO says, remember when John said X? And then they followed up with Y, and then they really challenged our thinking around something. That's when they've remembered who you are. They might say, well, which agency was John from again? I look it up and go, that was BBH. Because let's see if this rings true. The fact that you're in the room means that you're all qualified. You're all perfectly capable of doing the job, or else I wouldn't have invited you in the room. So therefore, you've got to do something in the room to make you really stand out. If I've got big questions about your capability in APAC, you won't be in the room if it's a global thing, because I wouldn't do that. So you've got to assume that we're all basically equally qualified. So what on earth are we going to do in the room for an hour and a half that's going to make them go, John said X, or John's got this amazing view on Y, or John, Jane, and Anne collectively had this thing? Without that, you will always have come a close second before you even start.
Yeah. No, at BBH, we were the black sheep. It was all about difference and standing out from the crowd. And I think, and interestingly, there's just been the new IPA president is Karen Martin, who's the current CEO of BBH. She's absolutely brilliant. And she's banging the drum for creativity and stand out. And as she says so brilliantly, this is what we do. This is the value we add. And we must continue to hold ourselves to higher standards and keep challenging clients. And I think, it's even more relevant now. If you go back when I started, there were about 4 or 5 media channels. You did a poster, you did a press ad, and you did a telly ad, which you put on ITV, and that was it. And you had cinemas, and you do, amazing glossy cinema offer. The amount of bombardment that we get as consumers across all the multiple channels that we operate or live in or spend time with, the need to stand out is even more important. And that's in how you deliver creative content for your clients. And that's certainly applicable to the pitch process. And it goes back to what I was saying, you've got to take the handbrake off and go for it and give biggest and best ideas, all with an attempt to be memorable and show your creative capabilities. So 100% agree.
And in fact, what Nigel was saying the other week, Nigel Roberts, I'll paraphrase because I'll get the exact phrase wrong, but he said when he's writing copy, his view was, I've got to try and make you stop for like 5 seconds and then ideally make you act. So in the same moment, I've got to stop your train of thought and I've got to make you want to act and do something. That's really hard.
And I think it is. And I think we forget this feeling. I mean, Adam and Eve, DDB, an absolutely sensational agency. They've got a new sort of go-to-market proposition it's all about how you get consumers and customers to feel about a brand, and that needs to be delivered in all And whether that's laughing or crying or going, God, that's useful, you've got to deliver content that delivers a response from the person that's seeing it. Whether, as I said, whether that's crying because it's a heartfelt film, whether that's howling with laughter because it's mad, or whether it's, oh, that's a really interesting way of thinking about it, etc., etc. You've got to get people to feel something when they see the work in whatever channel it is.
Given Jon's vast industry insights, we decided to split this episode into 2 parts. So this is the end of part 1. Part 2 should be coming out in the very near future, so look out for that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this extended episode. Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series, with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.